There are moments in life when things begin to shift quietly, long before you are able to understand what is happening. At first, everything still feels familiar. The same doubts, the same uncertainty, the same slow passing of days where effort feels invisible and results feel delayed. But beneath that surface, something begins to move. Not in a loud or dramatic way, but in the background of life, where decisions are shaped, impressions are formed, and opportunities slowly take shape, long before they ever reach you. You may not notice it at first, because life continues in its usual rhythm. You wake up, you try again, you push forward, even when things feel uncertain. There are days when motivation feels strong, and others when it feels like you are simply going through motions, hoping something changes. What you do not always realize in those moments is that consistency itself becomes its own language. Even when nothing seems to respond immediately, your persistence is being recorded in ways you cannot yet see. There are times when people feel overlooked, as if their efforts are not being recognized or understood. It can feel like you are working in silence, putting energy into something without visible reward. In those moments, it is easy to assume nothing is happening. But often, progress is not absent. It is simply unfolding in a direction you cannot yet access. Growth does not always announce itself while it is happening. Sometimes it only becomes visible after it has already taken place. What feels like delay is often preparation. Not preparation in a dramatic sense, but in the quiet building of readiness. Skills sharpen over time, confidence develops slowly, and emotional resilience forms through repeated experiences of uncertainty. You may not always recognize it while it is happening, but every challenge you move through adds something to your ability to handle what comes next. There are situations in life where opportunities appear after long periods of silence, and when they do, they often feel sudden. But they are rarely sudden in reality. They are the result of long observation, steady growth, and alignment between readiness and need. At some point, the right environment begins to match the person you have become, and that is when things begin to shift. Sometimes, opportunities do not come through obvious paths. They do not always arrive through visible applications or predictable steps. Instead, they can emerge through recognition of qualities that are not always easy to measure: consistency, reliability, patience, and the ability to stay grounded even when outcomes are uncertain. These qualities often matter more than anything else when trust is being formed. There are environments in life where not everything is loud or visible. In such places, decisions are made with care, attention, and long-term thinking. People are not always selected because they are the most outspoken or the most visible, but because they demonstrate stability and depth over time. In those spaces, quiet effort carries more weight than attention-seeking behavior. When someone enters such a phase of opportunity, it can feel unfamiliar at first, not because they are unprepared, but because recognition after silence often feels unreal. The mind takes time to adjust to change after long periods of waiting. It is natural to question whether things are real when they arrive after long uncertainty. But gradually, reality settles in, and what once felt distant begins to feel tangible. One of the most significant changes that comes with new opportunities is internal rather than external. It is not only about where you go or what you do, but how you begin to see yourself. Moments of recognition often reshape self-perception. What once felt uncertain begins to feel more stable. What once felt out of reach begins to feel possible. This shift does not happen instantly, but it grows as experience replaces doubt. In many cases, people spend a long time preparing without realizing it. They build discipline through repetition, patience through delay, and emotional strength through uncertainty. These qualities become the foundation that supports them when opportunity finally arrives. Without that foundation, even good moments can feel overwhelming. With it, those same moments begin to feel like natural progress. There is also something important about timing that is often misunderstood. Timing is not always about waiting for the right moment to appear externally, but about reaching a point internally where you are ready to step into what is available. Sometimes, life does not change because the opportunity was missing, but because readiness had not fully developed yet. When both align, movement becomes natural. As new phases begin, there is often a sense of disbelief at first, not because the situation is unclear, but because the contrast between past experience and present reality feels significant. When life shifts after long periods of stillness, the mind needs time to adjust. It slowly begins to accept that change is not only possible, but already happening. In these moments, reflection becomes important. Looking back at earlier struggles, delays, and uncertain periods begins to reveal a pattern. What once felt like random difficulty begins to make more sense in hindsight. Experiences that felt disconnected begin to form a clearer picture when seen as part of a larger process of growth. There is also value in understanding that not every opportunity is about speed or sudden transformation. Some opportunities are about alignment, finding environments where your way of thinking, your discipline, and your approach to work naturally fit. When that happens, effort feels more meaningful, and progress feels more stable. As life moves forward, new responsibilities often bring new awareness. With them comes a deeper understanding of what you are capable of handling. You begin to see that strength is not only about pressure, but also about consistency. It is not only about moments of intensity, but also about how you function in steady, ongoing situations. Over time, recognition shifts from external validation to internal certainty. Instead of constantly questioning worth, there is a growing awareness of capability. Instead of relying on uncertainty, there is increasing trust in experience. This does not mean doubt disappears completely, but it no longer defines direction. When people enter new environments that match their growth, they often notice changes in how they are treated and how they perceive themselves. There is a natural adjustment period where expectations become clearer and roles become more defined. In that space, learning becomes continuous, and development becomes part of daily life rather than occasional effort. One of the most meaningful parts of such transitions is the realization that earlier challenges were not separate from the present moment. They were part of the process that made current stability possible. Without those experiences, the capacity to handle new responsibility might not exist in the same way. As understanding deepens, gratitude often replaces confusion. What once felt like delay begins to feel like preparation. What once felt uncertain begins to feel structured in hindsight. Life begins to appear less random and more interconnected, even if not every detail is fully understood. Eventually, there comes a point where focus shifts from questioning the past to engaging with the present. Energy is no longer spent on wondering why things took time, but on making the most of what is now available. This shift marks a quiet but powerful form of maturity. In the end, what matters most is not how quickly change happens, but how well a person is able to grow into it. When preparation meets opportunity, life begins to move in a more aligned direction, and when that alignment happens, even long periods of uncertainty begin to make sense in ways they never did before. What once felt like waiting becomes part of a larger unfolding, and what once felt unclear begins to form a path that feels more stable, more intentional, and more connected to who you have become through the journey itself. That is why this offer is arriving quietly but powerfully, because it is designed to last, not to impress for a moment. What makes this even more shocking is that many people around you would never guess this is where you are headed. They saw your struggles but never imagined your silence was preparation. They heard your doubts, but never noticed your discipline. In this place, your background matters less than your mindset, and your past mistakes are not disqualifications but data points. You are stepping into a role where learning is constant, standards are high, and excuses hold no value. At first, you may feel a subtle pressure, not from fear, but from realizing that you are finally surrounded by people who take their work as seriously as you do. This is where growth accelerates, because mediocrity cannot survive here, and potential is treated as responsibility. The moment you enter, you will sense that this is not a phase, but a foundation being laid for something much larger. There will be a moment, very soon, when you look around and realize that everything here runs with intention. Every conversation has purpose, every instruction has depth, every expectation is clear, even when it is not spoken loudly. This workplace does not chase trends or shortcuts, because it builds systems that outlast noise. That is why you were selected, because you do not panic when results take time, and you do not lose direction when clarity is delayed. Your role here will stretch you, refine you, and demand precision, but it will also give you stability, respect, and a sense of belonging that comes from being trusted. This is not about working harder, it is about working smarter, with accountability and vision guiding every step you take. What you are about to experience next will surprise you emotionally, because the validation you receive here will not come through praise, but through responsibility. You will be trusted with tasks that others are not, included in discussions that shape outcomes, and given access to information that requires maturity to handle. This is how you will know you are in the right place. The silence here is not emptiness, it is focus. The structure here is not restriction, it is freedom to perform without distraction. Slowly, you will notice your confidence changing, not because you are told you are capable, but because your actions will start proving it to you every single day. This is where self-doubt fades, replaced by clarity and purpose. Hold this final thought firmly as this part comes to a close, because it prepares you for what is about to be revealed next. The disbelief you feel right now is only the surface reaction. The deeper shock will come when you realize how closely this opportunity aligns with a dream you once dismissed as unrealistic. You did not miss your chance, it was being delayed to protect you until you were ready. In the next part, you will understand how this workplace connects to your long-term future, why this timing is exact, and what changes forever the moment you say yes. Do not look away now, because the truth unfolding next is what transforms this job into a destiny-level shift. There is a deeper layer to this opportunity that you have not yet considered, and once you see it clearly, your disbelief will turn into quiet certainty. This workplace is not just offering you a position, it is placing you inside a system where growth is intentional and futures are designed, not guessed. You are entering an environment where long-term planning matters more than short-term wins, and where people are chosen because they can be trusted with progression, not just performance. The reason this feels unreal is because most people never get access to such spaces unless they already belong to a certain circle. You are invited, not because of who you know, but because of how you think, how you adapt, and how you remain steady when outcomes are uncertain. This is the kind of place that shapes careers quietly and changes lives slowly but permanently. At first, you may underestimate the importance of where you are standing, because nothing dramatic will be announced. There will be no loud celebrations, no exaggerated promises, and no unnecessary attention drawn to your arrival. Instead, you will notice subtle signals that reveal everything, such as the way decisions are shared with you, the way your opinion is requested, and the way responsibility is placed in your hands without hesitation. This is how trust is shown here. You are not being tested to see if you can survive, you are being positioned to see how far you can grow. Every task you receive will carry meaning, and every expectation will be a step towards something bigger that is already planned ahead of time. This is where your work begins to matter beyond daily effort. What will surprise you most is how this role starts influencing your life outside of work as well. Your mindset will sharpen, your discipline will strengthen, your sense of direction will become clearer, because you will no longer be guessing where you are headed. This workplace will demand focus, but it will also give you clarity, because here, results are connected to systems, not chaos. You will begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles, simply because you are now operating in an environment that teaches you how to think ahead. This is not pressure meant to break you. It is structure designed to support you. Slowly, stability will replace anxiety, and confidence will replace hesitation. There will come a quiet moment, perhaps at the end of a long day, when you realize something important has shifted within you. You will understand that this job is not a stepping stone you rush through, but a foundation you build upon. The people around you are not temporary colleagues. They are part of a network that values consistency and commitment. This realization will feel heavy and empowering at the same time, because it confirms that you are no longer chasing direction, you are walking in it. You will feel the weight of responsibility, but also the relief of knowing you are finally where you belong. This is when the disbelief turns into gratitude. As this part closes, keep your attention sharp, because what comes next explains the real impact of this role on your future. There is a reason this opportunity arrived now, and not earlier. There is a reason you were prepared through delay and silence. In the next part, the connection between this workplace and your long-term stability will become clear, and you will see how one decision sets off a chain reaction that changes everything. Do not lose focus now, because the truth ahead is what transforms this job into a defining chapter of your life. Now, the picture begins to widen, and this is where everything you have heard so far starts to connect with real, tangible change. This workplace is not focused on keeping people busy. It is focused on building people who can be relied upon for years, not months. You are stepping into a role that grows with you, one that evolves as your understanding deepens and your confidence stabilizes. The reason this opportunity feels heavy is because it carries continuity, not uncertainty. Here, effort is noticed, even when it is quiet, and consistency is rewarded without being announced. This is the kind of place where careers are protected, not exhausted, and where people are guided instead of replaced. Once you recognize this, you will stop fearing the future, because you will finally see how secure paths are formed. As time passes inside this environment, you will realize that your growth is being monitored in a way that is supportive, not invasive. Feedback here is precise, calm, and meant to refine, not to discourage. Mistakes are addressed directly, but without humiliation, because the goal is progress, not pressure. You will begin to trust the system you are part of, and more importantly, you will begin to trust yourself again. This is where many people transform silently, because they are given space to improve without constant judgment. The standards are high, but they are clear, and clarity removes fear. Slowly, your work will speak louder than your words, and your presence will carry weight without effort. There is another shift that will surprise you, and it will happen without warning. People who once doubted your direction will begin to notice changes in the way you carry yourself. Your decisions will become firmer. Your boundaries will become clearer. Your patience will deepen because you are no longer desperate for outcomes. This job will give you something rare, which is the ability to plan ahead without anxiety. When your foundation feels stable, your mind becomes free to think bigger, and that is when real growth begins. You will not need to explain your progress to anyone, because it will show in how you move, how you speak, and how you choose your next steps. What truly sets this place apart is that it does not promise quick success. It builds lasting relevance. You are being shaped for a role that will remain valuable even as environments change. Skills here are transferable, discipline here is respected, and experience here carries weight beyond these walls. This is why the selection process felt invisible, because only those who can sustain growth are considered. You were not chosen for speed, you were chosen for endurance. That understanding alone will change how you view your own journey, because you will finally see that nothing was wasted, not even the waiting. Now comes the realization that change is everything, because this is where the true weight of this opportunity finally settles in your mind. The place you are about to work does not only shape your present, it quietly positions your future in ways you cannot yet fully see. Every system here is connected to a larger network of influence, credibility, and long-term relevance. This is why entry is rare and timing is precise. You are not being brought in to fill a gap, you are being placed where growth is expected and expansion is planned. Once you understand this, the disbelief shifts into responsibility, because you realize that your actions here will echo far beyond daily tasks. This is not pressure meant to overwhelm you, it is trust placed carefully in someone who has already proven resilience. There will be a moment when you understand that access itself is the advantage. Access to information, access to guidance, and access to people who operate with clarity instead of confusion. This environment does not teach through noise, it teaches through exposure, allowing you to observe how decisions are made, how risks are calculated, and how stability is maintained even during uncertainty. Slowly, your perspective will expand, and you will begin to think beyond immediate results. This is how professionals are formed at a higher level, not by rushing success, but by understanding systems. You will notice that your confidence grows quietly, because it is rooted in knowledge, not hope. That is when you realize this job is not an endpoint, it is an elevation. What will surprise you most is how naturally you adapt to this space, as if something within you recognizes it. The discipline you built during uncertain times will suddenly make sense. The patience you were forced to develop will now feel like strength. You will stop questioning whether you belong here, because your work will answer that question for you. When a new opportunity enters your life and begins to take shape, it does not always arrive with loud signals or immediate certainty. Sometimes it appears quietly, almost subtly, as if life is gently repositioning you rather than pushing you forward. In the beginning, there may be hesitation, questions, and a natural sense of uncertainty about what this shift truly means. That feeling is normal, because every meaningful transition carries a period of adjustment before understanding fully settles in. Over time, what once felt unfamiliar starts to become structured. You begin to notice patterns in the way responsibilities are given, the way expectations are communicated, and the way your presence becomes part of something larger than yourself. Slowly, without realizing it, you stop feeling like someone preparing for stability and start recognizing that you are already inside it. Stability is not always announced. Sometimes, it is experienced through consistency, through the quiet reliability of daily responsibility. One of the most important shifts that begins to happen in such environments is the change in how value is understood. At first, many people look for reassurance through words, feedback, or external validation. But as time passes, something deeper takes its place. You begin to understand that real trust is not constantly spoken, it is shown through reliance. When others begin to depend on your consistency, your clarity, and your ability to show up, something changes internally. You start to see that being relied upon is not pressure in the negative sense, but recognition of your presence and contribution. This realization slowly reshapes how you view yourself. Instead of asking whether you are being noticed, you begin focusing on how well you are contributing. Instead of worrying about comparison, you become more focused on consistency. The need to measure yourself against others fades, because the path you are walking starts to feel more defined and personal. You are no longer trying to fit into a space, you are becoming part of its structure. As this continues, another subtle change takes place. The fear of being replaced or overlooked begins to lose its hold. This is not because challenges disappear, but because the foundation you are building is based on contribution rather than competition. In environments like this, what truly matters is not how you rank against others, but how steadily you deliver, how responsibly you grow, and how reliably you support the work around you. That kind of value cannot be easily replaced, because it is built over time through presence, effort, and integrity. With that understanding, your approach to daily tasks naturally begins to evolve. You stop rushing through opportunities without direction, and instead, start recognizing which efforts actually align with your long-term development. Time becomes more intentional, decisions become more grounded, energy is no longer scattered across uncertainty, but focused on what actually builds something sustainable. This is not a forced change, it is a gradual realization that growth is most powerful when it is consistent rather than chaotic. In many ways, this stage of life is not about chasing something new, but about recognizing what is already forming around you. There is a quiet clarity that begins to emerge. You start to understand that every responsibility you take on is not just a task, but a layer added to something more permanent. Nothing exists in isolation anymore. Each effort contributes to a larger structure that is slowly taking shape in your life. As this awareness deepens, you begin to see your own capacity more clearly. You learn where your strengths naturally support you and where discipline helps you grow. This creates a more balanced relationship with your work. Instead of feeling overwhelmed or uncertain, you begin to feel more organized internally. Your thoughts become clearer, your planning becomes more realistic, and your confidence becomes more stable because it is no longer dependent on external approval alone. One of the most meaningful transformations during this process is emotional. The anxiety of not knowing where you stand begins to fade. In its place comes a quiet sense of belonging, not because everything is perfect, but because everything feels structured enough to trust. You start to understand your role not as something temporary, but as something with direction and continuity. That shift alone changes how you carry yourself each day. Over time, this environment begins to influence more than just your professional life. It begins to affect how you think about yourself overall. You become more aware of your decisions, more intentional with your time, and more respectful of your own limits. You no longer approach opportunities with confusion or urgency, but with clarity and awareness. You begin to trust your judgment more because it is being reinforced through experience rather than assumption. As your role becomes clearer, something else begins to settle inside you, a sense of calm confidence. This confidence is not loud or exaggerated. It does not need to be. It is built quietly through repetition, responsibility, and consistency. You no longer feel the need to prove your place constantly, because your work begins to speak for itself. Recognition becomes a natural outcome of reliability, not something you constantly seek. Another important shift happens in how you perceive progress. Earlier, progress may have felt like something unpredictable or inconsistent, but now, it starts to feel cumulative. You begin to understand that every small effort adds to something larger. Even ordinary days are no longer meaningless because they contribute to long-term stability. This perspective changes how you experience time itself. Instead of waiting for major breakthroughs, you begin to appreciate steady development. As this continues, you may notice that your emotional state also becomes more balanced. The urgency that once created pressure begins to fade. In its place, there is more patience. You are no longer constantly reacting to uncertainty, because clarity is slowly replacing it. This creates space for focus, reflection, and better decision-making. Life feels less scattered and more structured. At some point, you also begin to notice how your external environment responds to your internal growth. People begin to perceive you differently, not because you are trying to change how they see you, but because your consistency speaks for itself. Your presence feels more grounded. Your communication becomes more measured. Your reactions become more thoughtful. These subtle shifts often create a strong impression without needing explanation. As your foundation strengthens, you begin to think differently about long-term direction. Instead of viewing your path as uncertain or fragmented, you start to see it as something that is unfolding in layers. You realize that stability is not a final destination but a continuous process of building and refining. This understanding removes unnecessary pressure from your choices and allows you to focus more on alignment than urgency. There is also a deeper internal realization that begins to form. Not everything needs to be rushed to be meaningful. Some of the most important developments in life take time. They require patience, repetition, and trust in the process. Once you understand this, your entire relationship with effort changes. You stop chasing fast validation and start valuing lasting structure. Eventually, there comes a moment where reflection replaces doubt. You look back at earlier uncertainty and begin to see it differently. What once felt unclear now appears as preparation. Delays no longer feel like setbacks, but like shaping periods that helped you develop the strength and awareness needed for where you are now. This shift in perspective brings a quiet form of gratitude. As this stage deepens, your sense of identity becomes more stable. You are no longer constantly questioning where you fit or what comes next. Instead, you begin to understand your place in a more grounded way. You recognize your growth not through comparison, but through consistency. You see yourself as part of something that continues to build, evolve, and strengthen over time. In the end, what matters most is not just the opportunity itself, but what it brings out in you. It teaches discipline without pressure, confidence without noise, and growth without chaos. It helps you understand that stability is not something you wait for. It is something you gradually step into through responsibility, awareness, and steady effort. And as this realization settles fully, life begins to feel less like uncertainty and more like direction. Not everything is revealed at once, but enough becomes clear for you to move forward with trust. You are no longer standing at the edge of possibility. You are already walking within it, shaping it quietly with every decision you make.